We're ready. We're ready.
We have a quorum, so we're good. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining. This is the first meeting for the CPC this year. Last time we met was November 16th, so it's been quite some time. And so the agenda for tonight will just be, we'll introduce ourselves. We'll go through the meeting minutes. And then I'd like to just do a little bit of homework for our committee itself to let everyone know kind of where we are with all the applications, looking at the schedule, the budget, as well as what you see in front of you is like a scorecard. So I'd like to go through that a little bit, and then we will get to the funding applications. So we have 5 tonight. So we'll start with the Spalding Garden and then work our way through to the Milton Farmers Market. I do have about 20 minutes allowed for each spot, similar to when we did the eligibility applications. If you could limit your presentation to around 10 minutes, I won't be a stickler, but I think when we did it the first time, the last time it was pretty good. The second time elaborated, so we'll keep it. I like to keep an eye on the clock in case. So just introducing the committee. I'm Rob Levash, I'm the chair of the CPC.
Jenny Russell. Linda Will, I'm from the Historic Commission.
I'm Callahan from the Affordable Housing Trust.
I'm Wendy Garpo, the appointee for the Conservation Commission.
And I'm Peter Jackson.
Rich Beeler from the Planning Board.
All right. So did everyone, I know it's been a long time since the meeting minutes probably got sent around from November 16th. I think I probably had a few edits, but other than that, if everyone's okay with them, we should approve them.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. That was easy. All right. So I've shown this slide a bunch of times now, but just so we can update everybody and kind of show where our journey has gone. The eligibility applications, which were due in October 1st of last year, we basically are doing the same type of review. So we kind of split up the reviews. So there was one on October 19th, there was one on November 2nd. We ended with the committee on November 16th, reviewing all those applications. And originally there was 14 applicants. They've been narrowed down to 11, and 11 applicants have asked them to move forward to the funding applications. As everyone knows, the January 13th was that date to get the funding applications due. All 11 applicants have submitted and got in their paperwork. I think since that time, Julia and myself have been back and forth with applicants asking for different pieces of their applications. I feel like all of them are pretty good now. And we had a checklist of making sure that everyone kind of gave what they needed to. And so that brings us to where we are today, February 8th. And the next one will be next Wednesday. And then the following Wednesday will be the committee's time to review those applications. And the process is for the committee is to vote on those applications, and they will go to town meeting. And so we will have to draft articles and, for town meeting and go before the warrant committee, etc. We will have there's basically two articles that will happen at town meeting. One is for all the recommendations for all the applicants, that goes under one article. And then the other article will be for the funding for next year. And that's already actually been submitted. It is a draft right now. So it's kind of on hold until we get the recommended projects there.
So can I just ask a question about that? The March deadline, does that mean that that's when the warrant committee meets, or is that when?
It's just honestly, it's just been kind of a placeholder that we put there. I think as soon as we can, I think like last time, it'll be really helpful. Like, I think if like Pete, you and I take on that process of like responding back in like a week or so, once we get the recommendations, because we need to go quick to get them on the article. And then we would go before.
Well, so you'd be checking on the printing date for the warrants.
Right.
Okay, because we need to have the actual article in the warrant, and so you can check with the town administrator to see what the deadline for the printing is.
Yeah, so I have been in contact with Nick quite a bit, and then we did give those two in as like a placeholder for now. So, but as soon as we can get it back, we'll get it done. So hopefully it's really early March or whatever that we can get that. And then I think, does anyone know, it's May? I thought I heard it was, might've been June 6th or something. I don't know. It's either May. Is it in May? Okay. So it'll be May for the town meeting, and then in July is when we will, grant agreements will go out to successful applicants. So that's kind of how 2023 plays out. I think for right now, with these couple of Wednesdays that are going out, I do have a plan for 2024. I think we showed it probably at one of our last meetings. I think one of the big crucial things that we had this year was we didn't have a lot of time. We were like really stretched thin. I'd like to at least try to give applicants a little bit more time, especially like the funding thing. I only had about 2 months. It would be nice to give 3 months and 3 months in that. And so we can review that. Once we get 2023 off our plate, we have some time after to open that up. But they kind of fall on top of each other, because March, if we want to open up the eligibility, they're going to be on top of that. All right, so the budget for fiscal year 2023 projects. Can you, I just wonder if we can move that.
Yep.
It's this, right?
No, I got them out with me.
Oh, you did? Oh, can you just move the Zoom, the window, or minimize it?
You see a cursor there?
Yeah, there it is. So maybe you can just minimize that. So the where we are today, just going through it, what's interesting is in 2022, we had about 751,000 of CPA funds that we collected. And then in 2023, there's been 2 state matches. So if anybody who's been following, there was 1 state match at 227,000. And then recently, in just December, there was another state match of $61,556 that Milton will be granted. And then from the surcharge receipts, it was another $772,800. So you add all those 4 up, and it's the grand total is $1.813 million. And how it breaks out is the administrative funds are at 5%. So that was always there, 51,400. And then of course, the 3 buckets: community housing, historic preservation, open space, and recreation. You add just up those 3 buckets from the 2 years, about 181,000 split across, and then the budgeted reserves looks at 65% is just around $1.216 million. And then lastly, which I highlighted down at the bottom, the total available funds for the committee is about $1.761 million. So I just want to highlight that because I think we had probably earlier estimates, and so this was just an update. And it is a little bit better with that state match in December. We were looking originally at like a little bit, well, like 1.7, and I think it's about 1.8. So that's one.
So Rob, can I just go back? I've been meaning to say this, and I keep forgetting every time we come up with this. This may be a small point, but I think, in my opinion, I think those are mislabeled. Right. The state matches are the FY22 state match.
Oh, yeah.
We are, and I think we should account, it might be an accounting thing, but I think we should account for that. The state match follows, several months after in November after the close of the fiscal year, but that's the way it is. It is really a state match of our FY22 monies.
Right.
So I think, to be totally transparent and just accurate about it, I think we should be presenting to town meeting and to the residents that whatever that it's 1,600,000.
Is that right, Pete? Or do I have, so is it really 2021 and then these are 2022?
No.
Or is it just the fact that
22? It's all 22.
Yeah, this was the receipts that the town got in 22, and those matches are to match the town's
But they didn't-
22.
So that's correct.
It can't be though. This is right. This is right. This is right.
So the two
These
matches,
could be 2000.
the 2 matches are the ones that,
Okay,
Matching 222.
yeah,
right.
yeah.
The one is coming in 223 because of the delay in the second round of matching.
Right.
It really is
That's the
matching.
difference, because I don't think that hasn't hit our bank again.
No,
But it
yeah,
really is
right.
fiscal year 2000. Okay, so the two state matches are 2022, but in any case, the accounting numbers are correct.
Yes, the accounting, the bottom line is the same, but I just think, just so as we go forward, we should,
So the receipts would be 22 as well then, right?
No, so it's just the two state
But it's
matches,
based
because
on 22.
no, because
Those are the fiscal year 23 receipts, the second.
yeah,
This really is 2023, that really is 2022.
Okay.
What?
So the 22 are already in town coffers, the others are coming as people are paying their real estate bills.
I think what threw me off is that, because I don't think we had that yet.
so we'll switch it back to 2000.
right. And I think everybody knows, but that 61,000 is a result of the legislature and the governor agreeing on an additional 20
20
million,
million, yeah.
which happens some years, doesn't happen other years. And it happened in the economic development bill that got passed after the budget. So that's why this is very unusual. Actually, towns don't usually get a second
Right.
sort of distribution because usually the legislature does it all at the same time, but it usually passes as part of the budget, but it happened after the budget in formal session this year.
So in either case, we're gonna have a lot less in 24.
No, 20 million is something the Community Preservation Coalition fights for each year.
Yeah.
And I mean, we have a new governor and, you know.
I mean,
Well,
who knows? I think it just depends on it really depends on the collections of people at the deeds and so.
Right,
You never know
That will
exactly
be
what
done,
we're gonna
that will be done. Most of it.
I think what's important is that for this committee is in fiscal year 2024, which we will be working towards, is we're gonna have a lot less money than what we have on the table. Right?
That's what,
It's gonna be around $1 million.
Because we'll have.
It's around, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so it always goes up, right? Taxes always go up, so it will probably be closer to like $800,000 plus whatever state match we get, but that's what we're gonna be working. We won't be in the same boat as we are.
Yeah.
So I think that's important. So, so as I said, the 11 funding application, this is just a tracker that we have, is the Affordable Housing Trust at 533,000. There's 3 projects for historic preservation. There's the Forbes House, which we'll see tonight, the town lockup we'll see next week, and then the Spalding Garden masonry stabilization project. So what's interesting is the 3 of these are around a little over $500,000. And then there is, I think it's what, seven recreation projects that are going to come before us. So I think what's important to look at this is at near the bottom, the total CPA requested funding is 1.663013. So if I go back, we had about 1.78. If we have an excess of about $100,000, which great, which is a really good position for this committee to be in, because it's nice to have excess funds if they're there.
Can I ask you a question about that? When you say we have that access, that's assuming that we grant all those at the dollar amount that is.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think too, as we go through this, like we'll see as we go, as this will go further on, like this is the money that they're requesting, and so we'll just have to see. But it's good that we're like $100,000 under that budget. It's better than being in. So originally, when we were going through eligibility, or if you guys remember, it was at like 3.5 million, and I don't think it was by happenstance. So we were really trying to,
Well, one of the things you could consider too is several of these projects are, or at least a couple of these projects are anticipating a phase 2, which is a bigger, the studies that, and there's no guarantee they would come back to us for funding in phase 2, but we might want to bank some money in case that happens too.
Right.
So,
so yeah, I think. Yeah, and then that's going to be a discussion for the 22nd. Is, if you go and fund all 11, just realize also what like studies and stuff are coming back, there's going to be some money there, but it doesn't mean you have to fund them next year or whatever. So, I will say the quality of all the applications were very good, and I appreciate all the applicants submitting them. I think they're all really good applicants. So then, get to this funding application scorecard, what's in front of everybody, and I sent a little bit earlier. Some CPCs, towns do this, some of them don't do this. I see it as a way, much like we had our traffic light system and when we did in November, as a way to spark conversation and to evaluate the projects. I don't want it to be a score where, you know, if you add up all these categories, there's a total score of 60 or something. I don't want to give a project and say, hey, you're stuck at whatever score and do it as limits. It's more for a conversation spark for the committee to talk. It also gives everyone a voice. All 9 members gives you a voice, and you can go in and rank them. And I think it will spark conversation amongst all of us to kind of figure out where they go. And I would like to just kind of look through and see where projects rank on there, and then you'll know, just like the traffic light system, if it's really easy, okay, we'll put these through and then we'll kind of weed out the other ones. My hope is in doing a system like this is it was built off our CPC plan. So it's in page 16 on really built on our principles and priorities. So if you read through the the 12 questions that are asked, it's specifically on that page 16 of our CPC plan. It's also what the applicants have gone through and hopefully answered in their applications. We'll see.
I have another question. So I think your idea of this as a way of developing conversations is really important, especially as we look to the future. But so here's the question. If we have more money than we have our applicants asking for, why do we go through the process this year?
I think it's a trial. So for
Okay.
me, I just want to see how it shakes out. I think it's really a trial. I know Pete and Jenny had, some comment on it. I agree with you. I think this year we're lucky in a sense because we have more excess funds. I don't think I also want the committee to be in a place next year. It's never going to happen again.
Yeah,
we're this lucky.
And that's why I said I
Yeah.
appreciate your effort to make it a point of conversation.
Yeah.
But in fact,
it probably, I think it's just a way to organize our committee to like really, and it's back to the CPC plan. It's building a foundation for this committee to really stand on, and so that applicants can see when they come before us, oh, I have to go through all these steps. And then next year it's not, well, because Rich is the loudest voice and he's fighting for one thing, it's over another thing or whatever. I think at least gives everybody a chance to score it or whatever. And I do think too, I would like to collect everyone's like scorecard and add it up. We're not going to share like everybody's name or whatever. It's just like, here it is. This is the scores of these of the average scores of the projects. And it'll be a talking point. That's it. I think we can change. It'll happen on the 22nd where we go through and we, just like the last time, we debated a little bit and then it'll help, and I think this year will be easy, but it'll be kind of a trial.
the other thing I think will be interesting to keep in mind is that we may see these as starting points, and then as we go through the process, develop a more sophisticated look at what things we want to rank and how we want to maybe weight the scores. Is it possible to see some of these as of greater importance, therefore of greater weight?
Yeah.
Yes, I like it. I think town meeting's gonna want to know that you put each of these through some rigor before they see it.
Yeah. Any other comments on?
I like what Linda just said about the various weights too. I think it's a great exercise, and it's actually maybe a low pressure exercise to your point this year. But it is like, like we have 11, question 11 is does it address 2 or more CPA focus areas? And I think that should be on there.
But it might not be as weighted.
But it's kind of unfair to the ones that just don't have that, so if they get a 1 or 2. So anyways, we can figure out how we weight them, I think, going forward. I think that's and some, might overlap on each other a little bit. So, but it's a really good.
It's a good starting point. I think the way you phrase it, that it's a way of starting the conversations.
Yeah, and I think we should just see how it goes this year and use it as a tool not as a, I could see this as being like a scorecard. Hey, if you got 40 or above, you're in or you're out. Like, I don't want it to do that. I just want it to, much like the traffic light system, I think it worked pretty well.
I think
So
it
like
did
as
as
a
well.
discussion.
Yeah,
So I'm hoping that the scoring system will be a similar thing. And next year, I know that there's going to be hard decisions next year, right? And so it would be really easy to fall back and say, listen, we discussed this, we had a way to do this. I would rather kind of fall back on that instead of like, well, we had a discussion, but Pete's the loudest voice or Rich or anybody, and and it can be that way. I feel like it gives good input from all the members too.
So are you suggesting that we actually hand these into you?
So you can, so I think I would love it, you can keep this. I mean, you have the scorecards here tonight, just because you'll have applicants in front of you to ask questions, write comments, you can fill it out. I would really prefer if you sent me one sheet back from the Excel or Julia, so that she can like literally we'll just plug this in, like it's an Excel sheet and it automatically calculates everything. And so that would be the easiest, but for those who don't like Excel or don't want to input the data, you can easily just fill it out and then give it in. Julie's not here tonight, but we could easily do that too. Like we can easily take this and bring it in, but we can also make copies and give it back to you. So you have it for the 22nd. So
I got a question.
Yeah.
Just for the process of the next this meeting and the next one. I can only speak to what I've seen in the planning board, but a lot of folks are calling in, please, for having comments. They're in our public comment section and at the planning board, and the select board does this. We have an open at the beginning where people can weigh in, and people are calling in about things. I don't see it on our agenda. Are we going to solicit feedback from people that are watching?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked the question. I think we should, especially as we go through this. I think it would be good to have like a citizen speak type of forum similar to the planning board. I will let comment happen for applicants. I think the applicants should present 10 minutes, and if there's someone from the public here speaking, they should also be able to ask questions on them and also give their views. I think that's fair for this round. And so that's how I would treat it. But I think we should consider it, like doing it on the 22nd, even before our meeting. Once these two rounds go through, I think we should have a public speak.
We'll have to limit it, or
we'll have to limit it.
I've been in some that are for hours,
Yeah, I just worry that like we get to town meeting and that we didn't hear voices of folks.
Yes.
Because you're gonna hear it at town meeting.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. So
important point.
So it's 7:25 now. We're 5 minutes early, but Georgia,
I'm ready.
you're ready? Are you signed down?
Okay.
Yeah. Look, you like my picture?
I do. So I just shared my screen.
I think Josh has got to give you.
Okay.
We haven't shared yet. Okay.
Oh, I gotta stop share. Hold on.
Okay, now I can do it. There we go. Great, and may I come a little closer?
Yeah, you can come on if you want.
You can come up here if you want.
Yeah, anywhere you
can.
Oh, I see, it doesn't matter, there it is. Okay. Hi, everybody. I was thinking I might sit closer to the screen to get covered.
Hello.
So, hi, everybody. The first thing I want to do is give a shout out to all the people who are on Zoom. I know a lot of people from my garden club are on, and I want to thank you all for the vision that you had for preserving this garden in the first place. So here we have a picture of Spalding Garden in 1926. This is from the Spalding archive, the Steel Archive, excuse me. I don't know what that blue thing is on my screen. Let me just
You
skip
had
it.
a pencil on that blue line.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, anyway, we're just gonna go with it. Okay. So, the Milton Garden Club, as you all know, is applying for a grant to secure restoration funding for Spalding Garden. The garden is of historic significance, and I have a lot of documents to share, and some of you have already probably read all of the documents. There's quite a few. But it was designed by Fletcher Steele in 1924, and it has been owned and maintained by the Milton Garden Club since 2004. Fletcher Steele, and I may need some tech support because I don't know how to advance. I'm pressing my arrow, which
Maybe
is
page
usually how
down.
I do it. Excuse me?
Is there a page down?
Yes, but my arrows aren't working. And they were before I started, so I'm not sure.
You're in Zoom.
Ah, okay, and do you know how to get rid of that?
I don't know how you created it.
I don't know. Was that so, sorry about that. So now I'm, there we go. Okay. So here we have the garden in spring, and as you know, we have a 48-page cultural landscape report that the Milton Garden Club commissioned around 2005. And this report, I have some excerpts here. I offered you all the entire report as well as a two-page summary. And I'm just going to read you one quote from the two-page summary, which says, "The garden offers the opportunity to preserve one of Fletcher Steele's premier residential gardens in Milton, to open this garden to the public and to interpret the significance of his design genius. In addition, the garden offers the opportunity to illustrate the importance of landscape preservation as an integral part of planning for change." So I think that really sums up what you all are doing on this committee. And here are just some more quotes from that landscape report. So one thing that the landscape report really calls out is the importance of the masonry in Fletcher Steele's designs. And I was there recently after snow, and you can see the herringbone patterns in the brickwork. And it's funny because this garden is really elegant on a snowy day. You see it differently and the forms become apparent. So I'm going to click through and show you another vista from that one snowy day we had this winter. So I have talked to a few masons, as you all know, and I happened to find a free laid stone expert. And he had a look at the east wall, which is pictured here. And he offered me his insights, and he offered me a price, which I'll get to in a minute. But I want to talk a little bit more about his qualifications. And here's a picture of the wall. And here's another picture. So as you can see, it's time for a restoration. And this is the original stone from the 1920s. So we are not talking about repair. We are talking about restoration. And we can talk more about that at the end if you like. Here are Mike Papil's assessments, which are all included in my package that I submitted. And one of the things about Mike that's so amazing is that he is a Milton local, and he has actually worked at Forbes House Museum with Heidi. So we have someone in here who can vouch for him. And he has actually done some work at the Milton Cemetery. And he believes in a collaborative approach, and he believes in engaging the community. And so do we in the Garden Club. So we are really hoping to create a community engagement model. Everyone remembers, well, maybe we remember that you used to have a barn raising, and we want to have a wall raising. We really want to do this together. So that was Mike's idea. Shout out to him. I think he's on the Zoom. And then he is certified by the Stone Trust, which is New England's own free laid stone wall organization. And I have also included some information about the Stone Trust. But do visit their website because they are the experts in historic stone walls in this area. So moving right along. Here we have the community preservation plan from 2022, and as you all can see, our Spalding Garden is here in the actual plan. So I know that you all, as you were framing what you wanted to do, were thinking of this, and we appreciate that. So anyhow, the scope of the work is to pull out the existing stones and wall remnants and save the stone for reuse for the Interior Secretary's guidelines. And I've gone into great detail on those guidelines and how we're meeting them. And the guidelines are 178 pages long. And I went line by line for the relevant bits and, you know, tried to show that we really are doing this per the guidelines. We're going to dig out the soil behind the existing wall, and then we're going to find more suitable stone and rebuild the wall, but this time we're going to make it double-sided because that is a better standard and it's going to give us a wall for the ages. So that is our goal in doing this restoration work. But how does that meet your goals? So I think, oh, and there you are, Rob. Thank you for visiting. So this is the garden as it is now. It's kind of a magical place. Some of the stated goals of the CPA include, of course, historic preservation and open space preservation. The CPC plan specifically notes that the preservation and restoration of historic landscapes is among its goals and mandates, and further notes that the demand for recreation space and opportunities outstrips the current land available. And that's from page 34 of the CPC plan. The Milton Garden Club believes that Spalding Garden offers opportunities in both historic preservation and open space categories. The Milton Garden Club is working to enhance our public engagement and our public outreach. In January, we are offering a public lecture on sustainability. That already happened. That was at the library. And in June, Spalding Garden will host the Garden Conservancy Tour. Other programming being planned includes horticultural programs for children at the garden, classical music programming, and of course, our community stonework and masonry program, which we hope to televise on Milton Access. Spalding Garden is on the town's open space registry, and we've reached out to Tim Truinsky to discuss ways to increase the garden's use by the community. Environmental sustainability is also a high priority for us and for this garden. Spalding Garden is organic. The garden beds are planted with native perennials, and the maintenance of the garden is done primarily with handheld, non-motorized tools. And there is our mower, a real mower. And because the ground is so flat in this garden, it's actually pretty easy to push, and it's silent, so you can actually talk on your phone and mow. And I would know because I've done it. The garden is highly drought tolerant, which is important since there is no water source on the property. The garden fared very well during the punishing drought last summer, underscoring the resilience of the native plantings. With regard to open space, the 2022 CPC plan notes, given the real estate redevelopment boom, stewardship policies should be formalized between the town, commercial, not-for-profit entities, and community groups to increase publicly accessible open green spaces. This good neighbor policy is needed for ecological protection, restoration, sustainability in the face of climate change, and community well-being. This observation that partnership is needed in order to bolster open space availability is well taken. The Milton Garden Club would love to be a good neighbor. I'm going to keep on going. Let's see, there are some of our volunteers, one of our events. Now I'm going to get to the good stuff. We have a letter. We have many letters. We actually have 10 letters. And I'm going to grab water because it's that time. Sorry, everyone. Okay, so the Garden Conservancy notes that Fletcher Steele studied under Frederick Law Olmsted Jr. and is widely considered to be one of America's premier landscape architects. The next letter I want to share is from the Library of American Landscape History, which notes the Milton Garden Club saved this valuable cultural landscape from destruction and has also demonstrated an exceptional commitment to its stewardship for nearly 2 decades. Next, I'm going to share a letter from the trustees, which notes, restoring gardens is not a simple task. It takes resolute commitment to rebuild and maintain historic landscapes. This garden is a significant designed landscape worthy of preservation, and I fully support your efforts to see this garden live on for generations. And I'm almost done. So I'm going to close by reading the entirety of this amazing letter that we got from our own Milton Historic Commission, because it really encapsulates everything we've said so far. But I'm going to skip to a pretty garden picture. And this is from Stephen O'Donnell and from the commission. It is with pleasure that the Milton Historical Commission recommends and endorses the stonework preservation project for the Spalding Garden proposed by the Milton Garden Club. The Spalding Garden is one of the last remaining private gardens extant in Milton. Its primary designer, Fletcher Steele, was, and you guys know what this, I'm going to skip that bit. He just goes on to say, we sincerely hope that your committee will approve the Milton Garden Club's application for funds to preserve and stabilize this significant architectural feature of Spalding Garden. I encourage you all to read the entire letter because it's amazing. And anyone on Zoom who wants to see a copy, I'm happy to share. And then this little girl is my gardening buddy, Anastasia, and I have to close with her because she is who we're doing this for. She says, hi, and this is to all of you. My name is Anastasia. I am 10 years old and I go to Cunningham Elementary School. My mom asked if I wanted to go to a floral arrangement event and it sounded interesting, so I said yes. When I first walked into the Spalding Garden, I felt excited because it was a hidden garden and we were having a secret meeting with new friends. Georgia showed us how to cut and place the flowers and plants into vases beautifully, and that was super interesting. I never knew you had to cut the plants at the very end to make it last longer. The Spalding Garden is beautiful and the Milton Garden Club takes care of it very well, so people get to enjoy all the plants and flowers it has. I would love to do this again. I really enjoyed it. So that's where we are, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Jordan.
And how many minutes did that take?
About 14 or something. You're good. It was good. It's good.
So I have a question. It's sort of 2 questions. The first is, I'm going to ask you to go back to the fellow who does the stonework.
Mike, yes.
Yeah, and would you go back and read what he said?
I'd love to.
The question I have, because the question I have is, if we are restoring
Yes.
a wall, it sounded a bit like he had broader plans than just restoring the wall.
Yes, that's a great.
So is that an issue?
No, and actually that goes back to the Interior Secretary's guidelines.
Right.
And so I'm gonna, because the Interior Secretary's guidelines specifically say that if there's a better way to do it, you are encouraged to do it a better way. And so I don't know if you've ever stacked wood, but when you stack wood, you always stack it perpendicular to the space. And so this is a retaining wall. And one of the problems is the stones have been laid parallel to what they're retaining. And so what he's going to do is redo the wall and put stones that are perpendicular. And so it will still appear the same from the outside, but inside there will be these interior stones that are holding the soil back, which is the job of the wall. And what Mike said to me is that although this is a beautiful wall, it wasn't designed by someone who knows about walls. So Fletcher Steele put, unfortunately, an element into his design that can be improved upon. And so we're going to be improving on it. And the guidelines, I do address this in the multi-page document that is the Interior Secretary's guidelines with sort of a line by line addressing of each thing that they're asking for. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I
Sorry.
was specifically going to ask about the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines.
Yes.
The second, and this may be not necessarily applicable at this point, I think it's important to help us understand exactly what you're after, which is restoring that stone wall and presumably making this a more open place to visit. And one of the questions I have about that is handicap accessibility.
Sure. Yeah, that's on everybody's mind. So I have some short-term solutions and some long-term solutions. My short-term solutions include offering some of our programming on Milton Access, so that not only can we have a wider access for the town, but especially for people who couldn't come in person to our event. When we did our Garden Conservancy event last year, we offered that if someone had an issue, a mobility issue, to let us know in advance, and we would find a way to accommodate. So we have been offering case-by-case accommodations. But I would say that in our forward-thinking strategic planning, this is an important question.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have long-term solutions yet. I think we're going to mend the wall first. And in terms of order, it seems right to focus on the wall and on some of the structural things. I hope you agree.
I don't want to commit, but I just want to make sure that you understand that that is an issue that as we go through these questions,
of course,
we'll be thinking about that. So that
thing.
as you focus your presentation, I mean, this is wonderful, but what we need to know is it going to be a restoration that meets the guidelines of the Secretary of the Interior? Is it going to open this space to participation by as many Milton residents as possible?
Yeah, I think we can explore that question together. But as possible is the key term, and we will open it up as well as we can with what we have right now. And we're thinking creatively on that question, because so here's what the Denver Botanical Garden noticed, that they weren't reaching certain communities that they wanted to reach. And so they went to them. And so part of Spalding's goal going forward is also to bring Spalding to the people. I mean, it's a teeny garden. It doesn't have a bathroom. Maybe it never will. But part of the magic of Spalding is that we can take it on the road. And, you know, Christine Paxia has already done 2 TV shows on Milton Access, both of which are in my submission. And so there are theoretical ways to bring the garden to the people too. And that is partly how we're thinking about this. I saw 2 more raised, sorry, go ahead.
Are you picking up on, I'm kind of picking up on this theme. So there's, you know, accessibility from an ADA and other standpoints. There's also just awareness, which is, I think, a little bit what you're talking about. So I've been in town 28 years. Up until last year, was totally unaware. In your presentation, you called it a secret garden.
My guest did.
Yeah, well, your guest did, right. But it is, I can't say I've read every word, but I've perused the application. I don't think I've seen an address.
We don't have an address.
Well, you're on a street.
We're on Fletcher Steel Way.
I understand that, but so it goes to accessibility, you know, awareness in town. I mean, how would you respond to the criticism of this is just helping the property values of people on Fletcher Steel Way? And create
feedback.
Huh? Well, no, I mean,
yeah.
So
I hear you.
CBA is public money,
yeah.
Taxpayer money, all across town, state taxpayer money even.
Yeah.
And we need, I think all of our projects need to have strong public visibility and accessibility.
Yeah.
And obviously every project's different and every project's not gonna have the same level of accessibility, and we understand that, but how do you So you, specific question, I guess, is you mentioned a couple events or several events. Some I think you've done in the past and some it sounds like planned for the future, but can you dive down into that a little bit? And,
Sure.
and how many of those have been held in the past? What's the attendance been like? You know, and then what's the plans for the future?
Sure.
Yes.
And to your point about never being in, I've never been to the Milton Yacht Club either. So, you know, it's a fair question, and
I know where it is.
I do know where it is. And the difference in some ways is that if you come to our garden, we're going to welcome you in. And not to say that they wouldn't, but I just haven't had that experience. In terms of programming, in the past, what we've done is partnered with other like organizations, including the Nature Conservancy. We did a tour last year and we had about 140 people in the hottest day in May. I don't know if you guys remember that day that was like 95 in May. It was that day.
Yeah.
And I thought people wouldn't come, but they came. And we were busy consistently all day. And it was a wonderful experience because people really valued and appreciated the garden. And I think partnering with organizations like the Nature Conservancy makes sense because someone who doesn't like gardens probably isn't going to want to come to Spalding Garden. But if you do love gardens, this is going to be a great place for you because of the horticultural element. And I was thinking about our own parks in Milton. I don't know that we have a lot of botanicals going on in our parks. They are highly functional for sure. And I've played on most of those fields, or my children have. But our garden offers something that's very different and distinct from what our parks offer. And I don't know if there's another place like doing this level of horticulture in our town. And so I do think that has merit, and not everyone cares about peonies, but the people who care about peonies really care. So I think we're offering something that is different and not equal, but important.
And do you have a public facing website or what you know, like in terms of getting that word out there?
Our website is a priority for our club. We're doing our strategic plan and our club is turning 100 next year. So there's a lot, we're on the cusp of a lot of interesting things. And I think that signage and a website and QR codes for the plants so that people know what they are. There's some exciting things being talked about. And if we have this restoration money, I feel like it gives a lot of mojo to this project for us. So, and we take feedback. If you have feedback, we want it because it helps grow our vision.
Two questions. One is a question, one's more of a comment. I really appreciate you talking about engaging the public. I think up until tonight, I didn't hear as much events and things that were going to happen. I think if you can continue to expand on that and build on that, this is public money. I think that would be really valuable. But as well, you know, I like the idea of building the wall. You know, I might not go and you know, do things with flowers, but I might go and be interested. My kids might be interested in going building a wall. You know, building a wall or something. I like that idea. I think that's a really cool idea. And really a good way to engage the public on it. I think that's a really positive thing. So I would say, you know, I would be for that, obviously, you know, with the expert who's there helping out. I think that's a really good function for it. And then the question that I have for you is, this is one wall. What, and I've been there, I don't remember because it's been a little while since I walked along. Do you have a campaign? Do you have a more capital campaign to restore the whole garden at some point? Or this is probably the one that's most deteriorated. I know that there's probably some brickwork and you know, to restore the whole thing would be a big piece. Is that other wall, is the other stone wall in decent shape?
Yes,
And that's
it
the
is.
reason why it wasn't.
It is, and yet I think part of this too is what we learn when we take down the wall. We're gonna learn a lot about what happened behind the wall. And then we're gonna know more about the integrity or lack thereof of the second wall. So I think this is also a way to inspect what we've got. But in terms of your larger question, I think that because this wall is the thing that is sort of, you guys saw that it's really in need of stabilization. The brick walls, they need attention more than they need stabilization at this time.
Yeah, it's
And
not like
so
they're deteriorating.
I think our next priority and our next priority for funding, which doesn't come from you guys, I don't think, is public engagement. And public engagement funding is not a bad idea for us going forward. And that way we have a two-pronged attack. We've got public engagement and we've got, you know, shoring up this wall, restoring this wall.
Just a quick question about the estimate that you got from Mike.
Yeah.
It sounds like he's the guy, or he's the guy you want anyway, but I'm curious whether you actually heard any other quotes, just as a comparison.
Not on this, in part because he made this quote in collaboration with other wallers. And there's only 6 wallers in Massachusetts that do this work with this certification. And he talked to 2 of them. So 3 out of 6 of them opined on this project and this price, which means 50% of the contractors who do this work offered their opinion. So I feel confident in these numbers.
I think it's a pretty fair price, knowing, and I don't know, Pete, but I think it's pretty fair.
No, I think it's.
I think it's very fair for knowing the size of the wall.
Yeah.
He's a community team player
Yeah.
and
it's
Heidi
pretty
knows
good.
that.
Yeah, no, I think.
Lisa Ahern knows that. So I think we're lucky to have him in Milton.
Good question. I got 2 questions. I know we have it, but I don't think we said it tonight, but what was the funding amount?
I think it's 16 something.
16,450.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the whole project cost.
Yes.
The other question is, so I know that there's some question on like where are finding it, but is it public? Like, is it open to the public? Like anybody can just go in and utilize it?
No, it's part of the open space registry.
Okay.
And then we open it to the public. We haven't chosen a day. We've discussed the possibility of doing that, in which we say summer Sundays or, you know, summer first Sunday of each month, you know, spring through fall. We've talked about the possibility of that. And, you know, that's a question that we really need to go over with Tim as well and sort of learn what an open space requires us to do.
But there's no issue with funding that this isn't completely open space.
I mean, we can fund this.
Okay.
But it's one of our questions.
It's one of our, I mean, it could
we
also be a
evaluate.
you know, we can put a condition on this that,
Yep.
you know, that if we're giving this to, you know, there's different obligations for private entities like this.
Right.
And the public work that we have, and we can talk about this on the 22nd.
Okay.
But just like getting we're gonna have to go through procurement for almost all these other projects. We're gonna have to go through procurement, or we have to get 3 bids.
Right.
And we have to take those because it's public money. So it's different. The two cases in the Forbes House is another one that, you know, this is also another private organization that we would be funding. And so it's different rules for that case. So, but we can condition anything. When we go via grant agreement, we can say XXX, yeah, whatever we.
I'd just like to make one quick comment. I think after your eligibility, things, one of the comments we made was we asked you to come with a plan for, you know, public opening and public use. And you talked a lot kind of generally about the things that you might do and what you're thinking about. And you almost hit it right at the end there, you know, when you were commenting to Rich. I think we'd like you to, you know, make a commitment and say something like, you know, we'll be open the first Sunday of each month from May through October from 9 till 12 to the public. And that we will, notice these things in the Milton Times so that people know it's open. I think, making some commitment to opening to the public, I think is an important thing. So.
It looks like Christine's got her hand up. I don't know.
I don't know if this will help or not, but I head up a team of master gardeners on the first Tuesday of every month, along with the Wakefield Estate. We do a rotation on Mondays and Tuesdays in Milton. And we could easily invite anybody that wants to come in and help, and that could open it up in some ways. I always get requests for private tours, which I've sort of just done. Just because I like to show the garden and talk about the historical significance and what it means to our town to keep this going. And Georgia, I think, did a wonderful job going through a lot of those things. And that stone wall is just one little part of it right now. And the longer we can preserve this today, it helps the generations tomorrow to appreciate it also. He did hundreds of gardens for the private sector. And of those hundreds, and many of those are in Milton, only 5 pretty much are in existence today. And that's all across the country. So this is a significant garden. So whatever we can do to preserve it and protect it for our generation and the next generation, I think is key.
I don't know if it's possible, but I mean, I'm intrigued by the whole, like, funding this wall and making it public. Like, we have Milton Access TV, like, run a program on, like, the rebuilding of this wall and what this means to Milton. I think that would be a really great opportunity. I think it would be a really good opportunity, and especially using public money to, like, get out and
Yeah.
Well, it's a marketing thing.
Yeah,
too.
exactly.
It would serve as a marketing thing, but the speaker mentioned Wakefield Estate, and I'm not comparing the two, but I guess I am a little bit. The Arboretum is open for self-guided visits daily, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday through Friday. So,
Tell you what, if I get a $7 million endowment, I will be open every day.
I understand, but that is I mean, I don't think there's any, at least in my mind, no question about the historical significance of this, the need to restore this. It's just the public accessibility has to be better.
Yeah, and I agree. It's just a question of bandwidth.
Yeah. Well, I also think you mentioned at a previous meeting that there was some question.
Can I say? So I understand that, and believe me, I'm in plenty of volunteer organizations in town. So the bandwidth issue, I have a lot of sympathy for. Why can't I just drive up there and park and go see it myself? Why is that not?
Yeah. Technically, because it's private, it would be the equivalent of walking onto my lawn, which technically you can do because there's no fence.
Right, I can do that on a lot of trustees' properties.
Right, and so,
I mean, I can't maybe do it after dark, right? There's rules, right? But I can do it within the rules that they set out, but it's.
Well, if you're a member of the trustee.
No, a lot of trustees go hiking in Sharon all the time.
Hutchinson's Field, is that?
Yeah, Hutchinson, yeah. I mean, open to non-members and members alike.
It's a fair question, and I am intrigued in finding you an answer you're gonna like.
I know it is 8 o'clock, so this is about a half hour, so take this to be around.
Well, I think you mentioned it at a previous meeting, and it has to do with insurance.
It also could be an insurance thing. No.
There is a recreational use statute in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that protects private property that is open to the public.
Oh, can you send me that? I would love to have that. Thank you.
Okay.
Who owns? Thank you.
The Milton Garden
Club.
So a very quick question. So one of the things that is on our list is there additional funding that's been identified through public or private funds?
I'm really glad you asked that. The answer is yes.
And
So contingent on getting this funding, we will receive $1,000 of funding to do programming in the garden.
For programming in the garden, okay, but not for carrying out the project.
Right.
All right,
Cool, thank you.
thank you very much.
Thank you for putting up with that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I am Heidi Vaughn. I'm the director of the Forest House Museum. I also have Andy McDonald, who's a trustee and on our barn committee. And remotely, we have Doug Manley of the Spencer Preservation Group, who has been consulting with us on developing the project estimates, the scope of work. Spencer Preservation Group also did the historic structures report and commissioned the structural engineering report that have informed our plans going forward for these two buildings. And if it's possible, could I be able to share my screen?
You can.
I can go ahead. Okay. So this is a slide presentation that we developed with funding from the National Trust for Historic Preservation to help us in our education efforts with the public. And also, talking to donors, that sort of thing. It is going to be adapted and put onto our website. And for our purposes tonight, can I make it larger? I'm going to get behind this black bar at the top.
They might be just on those.
Under view.
Do you want to go to the slide?
Okay, so there we are. For the people that haven't seen it, that's the carriage house on the right and the barn extending off to the left. Two very different architectural styles. What this does is it has a strong historical component that I don't necessarily want to go into tonight, but I did want to, just so people who haven't seen it, they know what we're talking about. There is a correction on the cover letter for our application. The amount we're requesting is actually $288,885. That is the correct number on our budget that was attached to this application. It was just incorrectly input on that page. So
885
instead of
9.
Yeah, I apologize about that. We learned from our initial presentation to this group, and you probably realize we reduced the scope of the work and we reduced our request. So we are focused on what we're calling phase one of this project, which is really to stabilize the building and to make it tight and dry. The focus is on the foundation, the roof, the chimney, the gutters, the downspouts, the windows. And as you know, we reduced our request amount. So at the end, I'll go over the budget briefly. In terms of, I did want to show you some of the damage that we're hoping to address. So zooming forward. On the left there, you see a close-up of those brick piers that are supporting underneath the carriage house. And you can really see that white area that's traveling up the column and the moisture that is degrading the structure. On the left, you get a close-up look, the mortar's missing, some of the bricks have crumbled right out of the pier. And then the next slide on the left, that's a rotting wooden gutter. You can see the pencils going right in there. And on the right, those are our slate shakes, and some are missing, some are cracked. And that's just a small sample of a broader problem across the roof of both buildings. In terms of how this ties into the goals of the CPA, we are on the National Register of Historic Landmarks. And in terms of public accessibility, we do use the barn more as a backdrop for events, just because of the condition it's in. But the museum as a whole, I hope people have recognized over the past several years that We've tried to do a lot more outreach and public programming, and just to be overall a very welcoming organization with a lot of diverse programs to appeal to a lot of different interests. Part of what we do plan to do, I mentioned putting this onto the website. Okay. And so I think as the project goes along, it'll be really exciting, particularly considering we have had a lot of community monetary support for people to be able to see where their money is going and how the project is progressing. So we will be updating our website regularly with photographs and context so people can get as excited as we are about what's happening and what's to come. It will absolutely help us leverage other funders. When I get to the budget, you'll see that we have a number already in the queue that we're applying to or plan to apply to. And, even for individuals to be able to see that we have this chunk of money from the CPC, that we can get this project off the ground. I think getting that first step is so important so people can actually, the Forbes House going back has talked about working on this building for a long time. And I think it's so important that we really show that we are serious and now we're moving forward. And so this will absolutely help us leverage additional funders. And in terms of long-term maintenance, how we keep it up, we do have a fundraising plan to raise money for the endowment. And this endowment would be dedicated to the upkeep of the buildings on the property, which is obviously really important with our carriage house dating to 1833 and the barn dating to 1887. In terms of the timeline, this is work that we could get started this summer and project to have finished by May of 2024. Letters of support, we've had a great success, I think, in engaging the public from lots of different sectors and getting their support. So I'll just go through the list of people that have supported this. Meredith Hall, who's chair of the Milton Planning Board and also a champion herself of historic spaces here in town. Representative Bill Driscoll, Dan Kerrigan, owner of Steel and Rye, Andrea Galing Moore. So she's the director of community engagement at Milton Academy, and Margaret Carroll's with the Milton Coalition. With both of these groups, we've worked on them for different programs, and we've engaged the youth through these organizations. Our neighbors have had a strong showing of support, as well as, and I didn't see this letter, but I was told it was headed your way, from Steve O'Donnell of the Milton Historical Society.
Commission.
I don't think we got it yet. Like I know, like George's brought that one tonight.
Okay.
We didn't get it officially, Josh. I don't know if you did. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't.
The committee has a support letter.
So we'll get, I'm sure we did.
Okay, all right, great, thank you. And then I guess the last thing I wanted to do was just go over the budget. So let me get out of this. And let me pull up budget. Okay, so the CPC monies we put in that first column on the left. Over to the right, you see some of the other funders that we're approaching, the Preservation Projects Fund, Preservation Massachusetts, and individual donors. We do have about $65,000 already in hand from individual donors. For the CPC, the money would go towards the access, staging, and disposal. There's masonry work to be done, as I showed you with the piers. For the foundation repointing, that's about $30,600. The chimney has issues that need to be addressed above and below the roof line, $9,100. And the biggest chunk of money here is that roof framing and the structural pier stabilization and repair. I'm sure Doug can speak to that if you have additional questions about that. $100,000. And then if I go down, you see other pieces of this jigsaw puzzle. That's the restoration and preservation project, include the roof, the gutters, the downspouts, and that's what we're going to the Preservation Projects Fund for. Preservation Massachusetts, we are asking them to match the money we've raised already with $10,000 towards the window repair. Total project costs, therefore, $288,885 of the our request to the TPC against the total project cost of $440,047.
That's the budget. So it was reduced because you got other funding, not because you lowered the project or both?
Oh, our ask,
Yes.
we contracted the scope of work.
Okay.
We're trying to get
Okay, so you already had those other funders anyway.
in the hopper kind
In
of,
the
yeah,
hopper, okay.
yeah.
So can you, just on that, can you speak to your history with those funders and how, you know, I'm sure it's competitive funding rounds, but how competitive and what's your degree of confidence in, I know I was an executive director, or I am an executive director of a nonprofit, so. I'm
Sure,
constantly
so-
grant writing, so I understand.
Yeah.
You can't probably be definitive, but what's your?
I'd like to say 99%, but so Preservation of Massachusetts, we had to first submit a letter of intent. So we made it past that round.
Okay.
And the Preservation Projects Fund, we have received funding from them before, as well as the Mass Historical Commission's Cultural Council Facilities Fund. The museum had to have work done on its foundation, and also the mansion itself had some issues in terms of weather tightness. And so restoring the windows in the cupola, replacing the gutters and downspouts, that was all done with money from these funders in the past. So I think we have shown to them that we have a good track record of planning and getting these projects done successfully. I also have a grant writer, Barb Silberman, who has had great success. Our current opium exhibit, she was able to get us funding from the National Endowment for the Humanities, the Institute for Museum and Library Services. These are large, federal, very competitive funders. So
Are they yearly that you're applying? Like, how often do they grant these awards?
they do ask if you've been funded in the past, and I don't think they like you to go back to them, you know.
Consecutive.
Exactly, year after year after year, but they also, I think, like to see that, yes, they have funded you in the past and, you know.
Well, what I'm getting to is like, is this yearly, like in the spring? So say we fund you, like you do have this jigsaw puzzle. Part of our conditions will be, a time period to get this project completed, so we don't hand you over 300,000, you sit on it forever. So I'm just wondering, like, how often can you go to get this funding or whatever?
I think they all have annual applications.
And you have a March 17th deadline on several of them, or I guess that's the same source, but and do you know how quickly they turn those decisions around? When will you know?
So Preservation Mass, they will tell us by April. I think the Preservation Projects Fund might be more in the fall.
But it doesn't look like these extra funds, you don't have to do it in one project. Technically, couldn't you just do the CPC and as your, like, do you have to do it as one project?
We do not.
So that would.
But they've already.
You probably
They've
could,
already
but
built it out.
they probably would want to.
No, understood.
Pay more, I think.
My comment was though on yours about, would the money sit there?
What did you say?
We prefer to do it as one.
Yeah, I'm sure you prefer.
That's not my comment. My comment is, you said that, would the money sit there for an extended period of time? My comment is, doesn't need to, because they could start the project.
Right, but
Depending on how we.
Yeah.
we're not doing the roof.
Depending on the-
I guess let me make up more blunt. If you never get that money, Rob's concern was, is this money gonna sit out there waiting? And I think the answer would be no, because you'd use the money.
So that's one concern.
Yeah, well,
That's one concern.
Depending
The other
on
concern.
what our conditions
Yeah.
are.
Okay, understood. Yep.
But what I'm saying is, this committee too could put in, we're gonna grant the Forbes house
Only
with a whatever we want, 2
Right.
years or whatever, right? They'd have to use the money.
Understood.
For the funds, Rich, we do a rent agreement and we would have as a condition that after 3 years.
3 years, yeah.
I think this is great.
Yeah.
Because we know that there's funding rounds that are always a problem for these kinds of things.
Yeah.
So the typical grant agreement says 3 years and it can be extended if it looks like they're doing something.
Right.
But there would be, if it sat there, nothing happened.
They would get returned, eventually.
Yeah.
But this is nested within a larger $2.5 million campaign.
That is correct, yes.
I think though, what's important though, I think for you to come to the committee is they're doing the most, like, the barn is in deteriorating fashion, so they're doing the most crucial part of the project to kind of stabilize the you know, the structure and things, and then they would go and work on other things.
So
For
can
any project, it always in a funding round, it's especially true with affordable housing, is that it always looks good to the other grantors, like the place in Massachusetts and all the other organizations, that the town has put in some support.
Put in some money. In.
Right.
And it always is a good plus for any kind of application to a funding round, until you've got a commitment from your local community.
Yeah.
Very true, yeah.
So has the Spencer Preservation Group already been contracted?
They're on. They're on.
No, they haven't been contracted for the work going forward, but they're consulting with us to this point. Yeah.
Gotcha. And the larger campaign, what's the sort of timing of that? What's your sort of sense?
It would be a 3 to 5 year campaign. We do have a campaign consultant that we're just started working with. So we're in the very early stages and starting to review prospects. But we do have the commitment of the board for this campaign.
Can you speak to the vision for the public use of the most public, you know, I know second floor is office space primarily, but that first floor, I was intrigued in your application, you referenced, you know, the loss of some of the other assets in town, like the Who's It Club and, you know, you know, so it does seem like there's a need for more public space like that in town, and so can you speak to the vision for that?
Sure. So just since the first of the year, and obviously we're not promoting the site at all, but we had a request for a corporate retreat and for our first communion reception, right? And so all this would be great if we could guarantee indoor space and they didn't have to worry about tenting in the event of bad weather. And it also opens up programming year round. So in addition to what the museum would like to do in terms of exhibit space or hands-on artist workshops, or, you know, we worked with Melodrama in the past, something with the local theater group, it would be available to nonprofits, so they could rent out the space for their needs, and there would be a sliding fee scale that, you know, we'll be determining going forward. But, you know, if you want it for a corporate retreat, or if you want it for a wedding, or if you want it for a graduation party, that would all be available too. The main carriage house would be very flexible space. You can set up tables, you can set up rows of seats. You know, one end could be the stage, there could be a drop down screen. And then off to the side in the barn, I imagine there being space for maybe smaller cocktail receptions, smaller meeting spaces. So we would absolutely want it to be, you know, another really viable space for anyone who wanted to use it.
And mostly is revenue generating.
That would be, yes.
Right.
Yeah. Any questions for Doug since he's tuning in?
Any other questions?
Have you looked at what the cost of maintaining these buildings is in the future, so that as you think about revenue generating, you can say that will cover the cost of maintenance of these buildings?
Right. We absolutely have to quantify the cost of renting the space as well as maintaining the space. So while we don't have those numbers yet, it is part of what we're considering. We've looked at a lot of other similar properties, for example, the Codman Estate in Lincoln, the Crane Estate in Ipswich, what they charge for their functions, what their amenities are. So we're in the information gathering stage, and we're also, you know, working to crystallize our vision of what the interior space will be based on, you know, input from the community and what the needs are here.
And Heidi, I'd like to just jump in if I could too, Heidi. I'm Doug Manley, architect for Spencer Preservation Group. And Heidi in the Forbes House had hired us to do the assessment report where we established the priorities, short-term, long-term priorities. But one of the other parts of our assessment report was a cyclical maintenance plan where we projected out what it costs to maintain the building over the next 20 years. So that was part of the document that we had done for them as their assessment report. So they do have that in mind as moving forward.
Thanks, Doug.
Part of the reason I asked the question is because 20 years ago, I was on the board of the Forbes House Museum.
Right.
We went through exactly this, and one of the exercises that I did was call places like the Lyman Estate, the Bradley Estate, was pre-Eustis Estate, and our conclusion was that basically the barn and carriage house facility would need to be used either every Saturday and Sunday between April and November. Or there was another scenario where it was staggered throughout the year.
Mhm.
But the issue then became that the museum became an event space.
Right.
And that, as I recall, didn't sit well with some of the people on the board.
Mhm.
And the amount of money that was required at that point, I think it was only something like $2.5 million. So it never went beyond the stage that you're looking at right now.
Right, right. I think having an endowment is really important to help meet those costs. And I do want to be sensitive to the neighbors and what they can tolerate in terms of traffic and events. But, you know, looking at this, we think it is possible to have it be a viable, usable, you know, rental income space. So we're still working on those exact numbers though.
Yeah, I think, and this is less to do with this group, but the importance of preserving the buildings is one thing, and then how they get used and funded in the future is a bigger question.
Right. Yeah.
One thing that's also come up, and I didn't touch on it with you, Georgia, but it's also how the town's historic commission is involved in this process. This is like the first, the first round of funding. And I think it would be who of this committee to put in our agreements that the historic commission gets, you know, it kind of has some oversight. Because once the money is given, it's, you know, I think it's important to.
You gotta tread very carefully, because all of a sudden it becomes a town project, and that's an issue.
Okay.
And the historic commission would have, we don't have a historic district. And so the limitations on the historic commission are unfortunately not as good as it would be if this was in a historic district, but it isn't. And so you don't want to be putting into, just caution you, be putting into conditions that then make it a town project.
Okay.
And give the authority to a commission which they don't have.
Yeah. It's a tricky one because it's no one has oversight. It's a private project. So.
It's not unusual,
Yeah.
and as Wendy knows from Plymouth, they have used their CPC money on the Russell Library, on the fire theater, on the historic museum in Plymouth. I think we have 4 historic preservation restrictions on the museum, and we've provided, you know, funds for private property all over Plymouth. So it's a very good use for CPC funding. But it, you know, as I said, sometimes we would require a historic preservation restriction in return. That's a problem because they have to be approved by the state, and that takes forever. So, you know, there's ways to do this in the grant agreement, and I will just suggest that as a mechanism.
Having received state funding in the past, we do have a number of easements on the property.
Oh, I mean, that was the case.
Yeah.
We had a chair who thought it's dirt money, it comes from dirt. And so I want an interest in the dirt. And so that could be the 16th preservation restriction on that building, and that's his problem. But everybody has their own, as Tom knows, from his work on the coalition. Every, you know, town has their own little, you know, twinkle in the eye about what they can get in return for the cash. So
we're going a little long. So is there any other questions?
One other comment I did want to make, what I recall was the fact that the access to the carriage house and the barn spaces is so easy for someone in a wheelchair or with some other disability movement, that it really improves the use of the Forbes property. where I think it's a little more difficult to get into the house. If I were in a wheelchair, I would have to find a way to get a ramp into the.
We have a lift that will
Yeah,
give you
but-
access to the main floor, but there's not access to the upper floors
Or the
basement
lower floor.
Right. But this, in terms of our designs and the way we're thinking of the building, you're right, making it handicapped accessible is much easier than the mansion was.
I just wanted to specifically quickly, you mentioned and I appreciate your rental possibilities for the space, but in the support letters, Courageous Conversations was mentioned, Coalition, these organizations with little or no money, at least my understanding and awareness of those organizations. So did those arrangements did you offer them free space, or would you contemplate down the road? I know this is 3 to 5 years. Again,
Yeah.
I'm going to be the public accessibility
Sure.
person here and consistently in all these, but that's, to me, that would be, as you build it out, that would be important that town bodies that were largely volunteer led doesn't necessarily have to be free, but very, and you mentioned a sliding scale, but is that part of what you do? I mean, you didn't charge Courageous Conversations, I assume.
We
have no
do
money.
not. Right. So very often we partner on events and we're able to get some funding. For example, we did a Reading Frederick Douglass Together event, and we paid the speaker, and we got money from the Massachusetts Cultural Council for that. And partnering very often makes you a stronger candidate to receive funding for the programs. And we would, try to follow that model and continue it, right, using this space. And then if they wanted to do their own programming, maybe a nominal fee, or maybe we're a sponsor and we get, the exposure that way,
Okay, I mean, fair enough, and that's down the road, but I just wanted to
Right.
keep hitting that drum.
Understood, yep.
All right. We set?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Middle Guile Field LED lighting upgrades. They
They're here.
They were here. Yeah, you guys. So I think I think you just need to if you have a computer, if you can log in to the Zoom, then you can share that way.
Okay.
Or I can also pull up.
Okay, so I'm gonna log in.
So if you just went to the town's website, you can just click on the Zoom link right there. Go to the town's website, look under public meetings.
Oh.
Yeah.
Password's free internet, no capital injection. We go 1 and 2 and 1.
Like, so that February 8th agenda, is that right?
Yeah.
That's like my personal one, and then my phone.
It was, I think.
Okay.
Recorded progress.
Okay, you'll need to.
YouTube.
You're welcome to start presenting about those materials.
Oh, here it is. Yeah. Right. Okay, so I think you.
Yeah, you can sit wherever you want. Yeah. You can sit here if you want, or you can, yeah.
Hello, my name is Sarah Skillen, and I am a representative of the group of organizations that are applying for funding to upgrade the stadium lights at the middle Gile fields and basketball courts to LEDs. So that encompasses the softball field, the Little League field, and these basketball courts. Okay. Here is a little outline of that space. So it's behind the high school. Softball field is used by Milton girls softball, as well as the high school softball team, as well as town and recreation teams. The Little League field is the Milton National Little League field, and then the basketball courts are utilized by the parks department, as well as just everybody who wants to play basketball. So
It's a baseball field there, but that's not currently lit, right? Or is it?
There are poles that point to the baseball field, right? Or they don't?
Not the large baseball field.
The
It's
one-
smaller, yes.
Yeah.
The one on the left.
A little.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I just didn't. It mentioned Little League field and baseball field. And I just. was
Oh, that
confused
might
on
be.
Yeah, no,
Is that-
yeah, I wasn't sure.
Misstatement on my part.
Okay, all right, that's.
That's sorry.
It's really only the softball, the basketball, and Little League. Yeah, that's what I was curious too, because
Yeah, that was my understanding of where.
yeah, I think that's the only place with it.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, sorry for adding confusion.
Sorry.
So the lights that we're proposing, I'm gonna hand it over very quickly to Mike Berry, who is representative of the company that makes this equipment. And he can tell you more about all of it and how it works. But essentially, it's a much more focused lighting that reduces the glare and spill in the ambient lighting around it and focuses lighting on the field. This shows an example of like, this is kind of what we have currently, and this would be what it would look like with the new equipment in terms of glare from, you know, people who aren't on the field. That's not a good description. I'm gonna let Mike explain it. So the total project cost, the estimated cost is $328,000 plus. We are asking for $288,822. The Milton Parks Department has committed $10,000. Milton Girls Softball has committed $10,000. Milton National Little League has committed $15,000. And we have a commitment of $5,000 from the Friends of Milton Parks and Recreation. And then there's letters of support from the boards of all those organizations, as well as now an online petition that has over 260 signatures from community members. The project timeline is approximately 14-15 weeks from when the equipment is ordered. So when we receive the funding, it's a 10 to 12 week lead time on the equipment, and then the installation should take about 2 weeks. So if we received funding this fall and we're able to move through all other steps of the process quickly, project could be completed by this time next year or around this time next year. And then this is just praise and accolades for Musco. So do you want me to pull up does anyone have any questions on these slides? Because Mike has some much more detailed slides with photometrics.
You did ask for that. They did send it to me, I think today, so we have.
Well, my question is different. I assume, since this is a town facility, that actually the town will be bidding the project.
Yes.
Or through the park department.
Yes.
And so somebody will be preparing plans and specs to go out to bid.
Yes.
Right, and the park department will put it out, okay.
And in terms of the budget that you've already projected, it seemed like there were some items that weren't included, sales tax, bonding, and then there's a list of 9 different responsibilities of the customer, that many of which included some cost variables.
Mike can talk about that. The town would be tax exempt, so I don't believe sales tax would be an issue. And bonding and the other stuff, I think is
We wouldn't bond for this project, so I think that stuff was it's basically non-existent in their estimate.
Right.
But Pete's you know, unfortunately it's a town. This is a town project. It's public money. They'll have to go out to public bid, and the procurement side of things. I don't know what lighting costs. I know it's your route of business. So I think that was a question that I had back out to Josh and Tim. We don't have, town of Milton doesn't have, we don't have a procurement officer right now.
Okay.
So I think it's pretty much the town administrator who would probably help us until that's like filled in with some of these projects that are public side of things.
Typically the community doesn't do the procurement.
I know.
And I would say.
No, we don't, we don't, someone from the town will, I think it
Or
would
the
be,
park department, yeah.
or the park department, whoever's kind of responsible, so.
I have a more basic question before we get to the technical stuff, and it may be just because I missed something, but did this project come up? What I'm looking at is one of our criteria, which is, does the project address an urgent need or time-sensitive opportunity? Is there a specific driver for the reason to do this?
So the reason that we started this project was because the Milton Girls Softball organization is basically desperate to save money. They're spending a few $1,000s each month. Each
Milton Girls Softball pays for the lights that are pointed at their field. Milton National Little League pays for the lights pointed at their field, and Parks and Rec pays for the lights pointed at the basketball court. And each of those organizations pays a few $1,000s a month for when those lights are in use, which they are in use very little. So there's very little usage, and it's very expensive because they're so out of date. And the way that they have to be turned on and off.
There are also significant complications with the maintenance of the existing lights, for especially in the baseball field. There are some interruptions to some seasons, and they're having problems. It's expensive to maintain the current lighting structure, especially on the new baseball field. So that was also creating a sense of urgency for them that we need to not have a major disruption to the season, because you have a whole slate of games at night. It's a big issue if they lose lighting.
And presumably we'll hear that the technology has come to the point where it's time. It's just.
Well, I think if you go back to your, that slide with the, I mean, I think some of this is, if neighbors came and said, what is this light going to do to us? The improvement in it is the light really goes under the field, not light spread out, right? And so I think the optics of it are really good for the neighborhood. The lights kind of put where it needs to be, and that's that top image. So and then it's the sustainability of the issue of it is really good. Energy savings, I think, is a really good piece to it. But I also think the maintenance piece of this too, it's expensive. You got to get a crane, right, or whatever, a lift to go up there
and it's environmentally responsible too, because of energy conservation. Dark skies and all that stuff.
So do you want to?
Yeah, your current generation is, like Sarah said, more to the left. Even at the high school football field, it's a few generations in on that slide, but you'll see all the way to the right where you don't really see the fixture at all. That is the LED technology. What we're doing is really concentrating the light down onto the playing surface, so you don't have that ambient still light that everybody's used to when it comes to sports lighting. You don't have that glare from a long distance away. Glare doesn't dissipate with distance, so you could be 2 miles away. If you have direct line of sight to those poles, you'll see it. Where now with the LED product, the way that we've designed it, you don't have that glare from a long distance away. Granted, if you're standing on the field looking up into the lights, you're going to have that still intensity, but it's protecting that environmental area around the field so that it's just contained to the footprint of the field. And part of the photometric kind of show that footprint of light spill. But that's what some of those slides are talking about in terms of the direction of light. The old metal halide fixtures like you have up there now, they were just spun aluminum housing. So you have light that comes out of all sides of that circular or that oval lamp. So it goes up, out, and down. Some of that light can get on the playing surface. Whereas now, over the evolution of lighting technology, you're putting visors on those, so everything is directed down, and we're containing it towards the athletic field, lighting that area of purpose, not the whole area. What that means is now people have to look at exterior lighting, so safely they can leave the field versus, before it lit up the whole neighborhood, so you can see where your cover is. So, what we've proposed here is reusing the existing poles and retrofitting the top of the poles, reusing the existing feeds going to those poles, replacing the front end, which is the control side of things, and then changing obviously the type of fixture that's on those poles. We also looked at reconfiguring the softball poles, because where they are right now is not correct for softball play. You want to have light on all sides of the ball for the players, so that they can safely see that ball from all sides. If they're catching a ball in outfield and all the lights are in front of them, the backside of that ball is going to be dark. So what we've done is move the poles more towards the foul poles, so that everything's aimed into the field of play, which helps us contain that footprint of light. And then we were retrofitting the.
Do you want this, but
you can just scroll, that's fine.
Do you I guess my question is like, you provided this estimate, it's some type of spec.
Yeah.
I think it would be really important for you as an applicant to make sure you get the specs that you need into the parks department so that they can, this has got to go out to procurement. So just to make sure that anything's apple to apple.
Sure.
And whatever else, so that, we understand that. Not my space, maybe Rich, maybe it's a little bit, Rich knows a little bit more on lighting than I do, but I'm sure there's different, I'm sure there's different, your competitors or whatever that use different things.
Yeah, we tend to target a performance-based bid spec, so you're calling out certain parameters and criteria within the project itself, the light levels on the field, light levels off the field, AW consumption, warranty, controls, some of the things that aren't proprietary, but it allows it to be bid through the public procurement process. So what there's scrolling through aggressively is the photometric design. You'll see that
Go up.
yeah, if you go towards the top there. So
This one?
right there's good. So this is, you can see the outfield poles, the B poles are not where they are currently. We're moving them out towards more of a traditional location. You can kind of see on the Google Earth there that where they are is a little bit beyond the third base and first base line. That's for the new location. If you move that to the left, you'll see kind of where they are currently. So what that means is there's no light behind the ball for the players out there.
So you are moving poles.
That's our proposal. You have to move just 2 poles, reuse the poles, but just put new foundations.
Is it only in this location or is it in other locations too?
Just these 2 poles for this field. Baseball, they're in the right locations. It's really just 2 poles.
So they're right now, they're by the dugout. Is that what you're?
They're like 2/3 of the way down. You can kind of see one that has a third. Yeah, exactly. Touchscreen.
Don't do that.
Yeah, and then the other one is similar. It's near the outfield, near that foul pole of the Little League field. So the location doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't know what the thought process was.
A lot better.
Yeah, when it was built and what was there.
Well, but so is that 2-week lead time of construction realistic with like moving poles and things?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, stripping the poles, replacing the pole tops, and then it's a pretty quick process. And that's why we figured the 2 weeks. If they ran into really ugly soils or something astronomical, it might move to 3 weeks, but 2 foundations is easy in a couple of days. So this proposal just shows the light levels meet ASA softball standards, and if you scroll to the Little League field, again, meets the same requirements for light levels. Again, we're reusing the poles there, just showing what the light levels are. Keep going. The basketball, it's recreational use. They have 2 fixtures per pole right now. We're going back up with 1 fixture per pole. And so in terms of recreational light levels, that's what you have for recreational basketball.
Maybe one night you can explain to me what these numbers mean. But tonight,
it's a foot candle reading. Yeah, it's.
What's the red? What's the red?
Red lowest, green's your highest. So it's just your uniformities where we're looking at. You're kind of where you're reusing 25-foot poles, so we're kind of handcuffed in terms of how much you can distribute the light. But that's what that's showing. Keep going. This is your foot candle. This is called our zero grid. You can see the red and black, right? You can't see the actual values unless you zoomed in 1000%. But that shows the footprint of the actual light for all the fields as they're lit. You can see that it's pretty much contained to the footprint of the athletic area.
Great. I think that's probably the most important.
Yeah.
For the neighbors.
Yeah, the neighbors at least.
Yep. So that's your foot candle readings.
It does spill over to the parking area at first to some degree, right?
A little bit on the upper parking area.
Yeah.
So these readings are figuring everything's on a level plane. We can't calculate the elevated parking area too, which means it'll be actually higher up. So it'll probably be lower than what you're seeing there. But
so it probably would be nothing because that's way up there.
Yeah.
Would be.
Yeah. Okay.
But from a control standpoint on the front end, This would have our controlling system, which allows the users to program when the lights turn on, when they turn off. Unlike with metal halide, they take 15-20 minutes to warm up, so they have to turn them on ahead of time. There's the warm up period, and the lights are at full power. LED, it's instant on, instant off. With this control system, the users can say, all right, we know we have practice there at 6:30, lights can turn on at 6:30, or you can do it in 5 minutes so people can walk into the field. But, and you know, if you have a curfew or you have practices done at 8 o'clock, because that's when we've told everybody they're going to be done, the lights can power off. This also has dimming functions too, where you could say the lights dim down to a low level, 25%, so that they can at least see, you know, egress the field safely, and then they power off. But that's part of our control.
So all the boards in town now pay X amount of money. If this project goes through, is that going to be renegotiated or whatever, and realize the savings get passed on to the boards?
Well, if each board just then continues paying for the fixtures that they use and when they use them, then they'll realize their own cost savings. It should be.
They've got them metered separately.
They've got metered, they're all.
So they can calculate how much light is being used by the softball, and that's what they pay for.
So that's see their savings.
Yes.
So there's,
I didn't realize that they were all metered.
so there's a lot, there's a lot of non-energy benefits there, like the society and players and all the things, so those are big. But did you calculate, I'm thinking you did calculate the savings for just general electric use?
In terms of the cost?
Same question is kind of that, like, so what is it?
60%?
It was about 60%.
60%.
Yeah, 60%.
So what does the football field have now for lighting?
As our prior generation, I think it's our prior to 2006.
Right.
So it's a couple generations ago.
Is that LED or?
No.
Metal halide.
Same control systems and.
I think they,
So why?
No, it's totally separate.
I'd have to look. Back then it was kind of an option.
I think because all these boards in town are separate.
The football field is managed by the school committee and not, this is managed by the parks. So they weren't interested, I guess, in participating or.
I think they have their own long-term plan, of which this is the part, but they're not. No.
But there are the same must go control systems.
Yeah.
But they're just not, you know, they don't work together.
Yeah.
That's all right. I was just curious.
I didn't look to see what they had for controls on the high school and how they turn them on, turn them off. The controlling system's been around probably 2004. Where it was wireless on-off controls.
Yep.
And then in 06, it became standard offering with all of our projects. And now it even has additional features where you can dim it. It allows us to troubleshoot outages and do a lot of it remotely to understand what's working correctly and what's not.
For what it's worth, I'm familiar with yours because I used to work with utility approving something.
Okay.
So one other question I have about the funding. So you've gotten the 40 grand from the 4 other departments. How were those amounts determined?
Each organization kind of did their best to offer roughly 10%. Is that the right number?
Well,
It's 12. It's 12.
Yeah.
It's 12 cents.
They did their own fundraising, all of the organizations.
It's from their, yes,
Yeah,
they
it's
all
from
do
their organization.
well, the Parks Department doesn't, but yes.
Well, the other
So
three are
literally do their own
volunteer,
fundraising.
Well, I think it's great that
And
they
they're-
come up with money
Yeah,
to support this, right?
Yeah.
That has to support it all. I think that's great.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it's parents chipping in.
Yes,
We're still 20 minutes behind, I think.
I know. Anyone else, the question? Appreciate you guys coming out.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anything else? All right. Pick them all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
They were all of these. Every, other than the 2 that we had previously, everything else will be town money, so it'll have to go out to the public bid.
So would we have to know that, the answer to that before we decide?
The answer.
What do we need to know what the answer for? What, basically, that's what I'm trying to say, if they.
Because it might be a completely different number, if there's a different.
Well, that's all you're doing is contributing.
We're gonna give them money, yeah,
It's not, you're not deciding factor
Right.
on how much it costs.
right, yeah,
All you're doing is supporting the project by providing some CPA
Right.
funding, so there's a different bucket that
Right.
the town can go to pay for.
So
so.
if their bids come
So
in higher.
if the bids
they've
come in
gotta
high,
come up
then
with more
they'll
money.
come up with
That's
more
fine,
money here,
that's their
Right.
issue.
Right.
You know.
right? Or if it comes in lower, then whatever, it is what it is. But I think for some of these, well, they're gonna have to go out, be competitively bid, but the way around it is like, you make sure you put the specs and like whoever's doing procurement does.
Plus, this is probably a great system, fully controlled.
I'm sure it is.
It's, yeah,
Yeah.
So I mean, it depends on where you want to go.
Right.
And sorry, just the timing of it in terms of those other bids, when does that come in after we make a recommendation or?
They
before?
can go out, like, once we go recommend it, right, they can.
Well, the issue is, what we ran into at the fire station, is it's a planning.
Right.
So they can't go out, and they can't sort of set aside a bucket of money. And then have us come in and say we have a town meeting article that will.
It's gonna be more or whatever, we have to, yeah, we have to,
But they could act after town meeting.
They can act after
Yeah,
town
right.
meeting.
yeah,
And, you know, they can do it for less than what we would be providing, which they won't.
but they can't do it.
They'll wait until they get the town meeting.
Yeah,
And all you're just providing another bucket of cash,
right,
Yeah.
and that's
and it's based on their estimate.
no grant agreement, you know, we're not doing any of that. We just said, you fine, they go out to write a check, they can take it out of this account and that account, and it's.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Pickleball,
Hi,
hello,
Mary and Pat. And the Milton Pickleball Players, which is a group of about 30 people, presented the application originally asking for what do we have for 300,000?
500,000.
Initially for 8 pickleball courts. Dedicated courts that weren't painted on lines on tennis courts, but with installed nets. Then Rob asked me to reapply for a feasibility study. So that's the current application, is for $20,000 for the feasibility study. And for that, we've gotten an estimate from Bill Madden, who's a Milton resident, but is with the firm Lombardi Design. They design, among many other things, tennis courts and pickleball courts. And they're involved in some other projects, building pickleball courts in Massachusetts now. This was, Rob's suggestion was to reach out to, he gave me 3 names, and so I spoke to Bill. He's done other work in Milton before. He's done the American baseball field up at Cunningham Park, and he's a member of the community, cares deeply about it, and does some pro bono work in the community. So we met with him and we got, I think I sent you his proposal. And so you have what he outlined. We don't really know what, the feasibility study is going to come up with. He may say it's more practical to do 2 courts here and 3 over here instead of 8 all over there. Part of his proposal will include locating sites to put the courts. Part of it will be not a sound study, but considering the sound implications, which is one of the major things that people pose about pickleball. There are, we got 440 signatures and letters of support from community members. We started out about a year and a half ago with 10 people playing, and we're up to about 40 now. And continuously people, we play at the Council on Aging right now. It's the only indoor court we have, it's one court. And only 16 people can play. It's only 2 hours a week that we have. That's indoors, that's winter conditions. And then many of us go to other towns to play, such as their academies, courts that they have a facility in Braintree. Some people go to other surrounding towns to play. But there are always more and more people walking to Council on Aging asking if they have lessons or if they can join or where we're playing and how they can join us. So it's an ever-growing sport that people are interested in, and it's just going to grow more. Many towns have access CPA funding, and that's on the, I don't know if you looked at that, but the CPA, the NAS website of all these towns who have built a number of different types of courts, ranging from 2 to 8. There's also shareable surfaces, you know, where a basketball court or a tennis court could be marked on. And in that event, we'd have to set up our own netting, which is, that's what we do now at the Council on Aging. And we do that at Kelly Field when we're outside. The tennis courts, there's 3 tennis courts that are marked. And so we have a total there now of 5 courts that we can play on. Even weather, we have a locker there and we put up and take down the nets every time. The co-applicant is Parks and Recreation for the town because we're not a 501(c)(3). So they have given us their support. Any questions?
Just a quick question. You said currently there's 5 courts. Is that Milton or surrounding towns?
It's in Kelly Field.
Oh, Kelly.
And there's 2 over there also.
There is 2 where they
tennis courts. And
10, well, no, that are painted for pickleball.
yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
The Kelly ones are tennis.
Oh,
yeah.
So you have 7 right now in town?
Excuse me.
There's 7 in town right now. There's 2 at Andrews and 5 at Kelly.
There aren't any at Andrews right now.
Yeah, there are 2 are painted at Andrews.
Where?
And the tennis courts.
I wasn't aware of that. Oh.
So I think too, sorry. We talked a little bit about too, like Cunningham. So did that go on the back burner now? Because Cunningham was talking about potentially replacing courts there with pickleball courts. And I know you were in discussion.
Cunningham wants to move forward with building pickleball courts.
Yeah.
They'd like to put in, well, I won't talk specifics about what they're planning to do, but they decided not to be a co-applicant with CPA money because they didn't want any strings attached to what they're doing. And if they needed to change the purpose of the courts, it's
okay, that's
you know. And they are very interested in it. And also we're in the process of discussing and trialing indoor courts at the hall. I mean, 1 court in the hall.
I will say, and I mean, I'm sure that the committee's gotten about 10 opposition letters, and I think it's probably because, you know, there was 8 courts being proposed at Andrews Park or, you know, whatever. At least it made me go and look a little bit more about pickleball and the noise and whatever else. So I think it's good to have the study and have an expert kind of figure out where things are going to be. I think it will be really important to figure out how far away they are from neighbors, all those type of things. Also, I think there's been some concern from other, you know, boards and groups in town that have kind of expressed, oh, geez, if we're losing open space, but, you know, open space is so, you know, a prime thing in Milton. So all those things need to be considered in the study, but that's the reason to do the study and to really keep it vast and look at all open space. And I think it would be smart to, you know, work with the open space committee and things like that.
So can I just ask a question on building off of that? So if the Cunningham Foundation moved forward with building pickleball courts in Cunningham Park, I mean, obviously, it's a big unknown. We don't know if we'll do it, how many courts they'll build and that type of stuff. Would you think that that would eliminate the need for the study even, or building other courts in town? Or do you think, you know, it's likely that you would want more court, there'd be demand for more courts than what Cunningham is able to?
Well, just based on how fast the sport is growing, I would envision the need for more courts. I think, yeah, I think that would augment what we would be asking for. And like you said, we don't know when. The time frame for the study would be by June, that would be completed. And then would have to apply again based on what they recommend.
Well, you wouldn't, so we wouldn't, June wouldn't, it would be after June because we wouldn't have funding to do it. Yeah, it would be after July.
So what I'm saying is it's gonna be a couple of years anyway, you know, because if we apply for next year.
To actually build courts.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we're not gonna see courts for a few years anywhere.
Right.
And I just can't predict Cunningham's timeline.
That's fair.
I just know that they're very interested and motivated to do it.
I think they're moving ahead, is what I understand.
I see two hands up, who's online. So Kevin, I see you got your hand up if you want. You got the floor.
Yep, so I'm Kevin Chisholm, the park director, town of Milton here. So we do have one court painted for pickleball at Andrews, and I believe there's 6 at Kelly. We are doing our best for this group. They're very active group, and we're doing our best for them. We've provided some nets and some storage for them as well. I just don't know personally if Andrews is the best spot for this location. It's very tight down there. The parking's tight. I think there's better spots in Milton for pickleball courts to go in. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh,
yeah. Sue.
Yes, thank you. I just want to speak because one of the I live by Andrews Park, and I actually signed for it when someone come to my door. But I simply put it, I don't really know. I didn't know what I was signed up for. So after I learned about pickleball and then its impact, I'm 100% against it. I don't think it, because like do a simple Google search, and you should you can see there are a lot of pending lawsuits about the noise, and when the pickleball is by the residential area, like Andrews Park particularly, there are a lot of neighbors' backyard directly at where they want to set up the pickleball. So I don't think it's a good idea to set up pickleball courts in any a residential area. I know right now it's still try to approve the feasibility study, but I just want to say that I signed up I'm one of the signatures, but I really don't know what I signed up for. I'm totally against it if it's nearby in the residential area. I think it's a very bad idea to put in the residential area, and especially there are already so many examples from other states around the country already, and it will be waste of taxpayers' money, and then it's not going to do anything good if it's nearby a residential area. I just want, and also for Andrews Park particularly, it's already fully used, especially in sports season. My son play baseball and soccer, and I know we live by it. It's already fully utilized. And for that small spare area they want to use, that one actually kids like my son, we do like a ad hoc practice there, and there are other group like the Irish football they play over there. It's not really like a spare area. It's not like Andrews Park is really fully utilized, and the parking is already an issue in the sports season. I don't see why, you know, why have to put there anyway. That's all. Just want to raise that point at this point. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it, Sunny.
Thank you. Whoever's got their.
Are we taking public testimony? I didn't know. Are we?
Yeah, I mean, I think we should. Yeah, I mean, yeah, and I did say earlier on that we will. Yeah, I said it comments from us or the public.
Okay.
Someone who's got the name iPad.
Who's got their hand raised?
Who's got their hand raised with iPad?
There we go.
Hello?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, this is Jim Pelton. I live on Howe Street, abutting Andrews Park. And interestingly, I might be the only person in town that's had firsthand experience with a pickleball complex. I moved from a community in Arizona where, at the urging of some residents, the developer built a pickleball complex. And after about a month of people listening to pickleballs, 12 hours a day, the developer ended up plowing that pickleball into the desert sand. He later relocated the pickleball court into a utility area in the community, which worked out beautifully because it did not impact residents. So the location of pickleball, it's crucial for the success of the players and the surrounding community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
A quick question. On the feasibility study, and I don't know this. Is it specific to go check these couple areas, or is it?
I think it's townwide right now.
That's right.
But I think to this point, right, like we've had few letters, and you know, I believe, I don't know, I don't live in East Milton anymore. So, you know, the fact is, you know, your group was going out proposing that we're going to put 8 courts in Andrews Park or whatever. And I think the difference on that is the application that we received, and what we asked of your group was to study this townwide. And I think the reason why I had suggested that to you was for this exact reason: get experts involved, understand why, you know, what it is. You know, personally, I'll tell you, you know, mental health is an issue. This is a game for people to go out and play and do it. So I strongly support it in the right area. And so I think it's really important to figure out where it is in the right area. And so to do that, you know, it needs a study before, you know, anybody would go and fund where the courts are. So that's the reason why I believe the study is really important and have experts do it. You know, I read about the sound issues and stuff. That is a real concern if you're, you know, a resident that's close by, so they need to be put in a good place. There's many things that you can put walls up for sound and things too to help. But I think that should just be part of the study and figure it out. Have your experts come and show where it is in town. I think it is a real concern with all the other sports in town, as some people mentioned. You know, everybody's jockeying for fields and whatever else. So it really will be important to figure out where these things can go, or how many or whatever. So
I've got a couple questions or comments. I think it's first of all, the proposal from Lombardi said that they would look at 3 to 4 potential sites. So I think it's important what sites are identified. Again, I guess the park department will be hiring this consultant. My guess is
it could be so, and this lies on procurement. So with design services, and Josh, you could speak to this, but I think it's not as like, you know, you don't need to go out and get 3 bids and et cetera. This group can go out and hire who they want
Well,
because
I
it's
guess
under a certain amount.
Yes, the park will be.
No, the
Not
park would be.
Not the
but-
private group, so it will be a public.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's probably below the,
It's below the threshold, so it doesn't.
Yes, for this amount of money, they have to get 3 bids
Yeah.
instead of they don't.
But they don't
to
have-
build.
No, they wouldn't on this. They wouldn't on this.
Yes.
design services are protected category.
My second comment on the scope of work is there's nothing in there about a public process or public review or something. And I don't think it'll fly for somebody just independently to look at anything and there's no public outreach to the community, to the neighborhood or something. If they, start zeroing in on a site or all the sites, they might want to get a feel for public acceptance. Because, a proposal could be there and we could get the same thing that happened at Andrews and the neighbors just are up in arms. So I think it's important that part of the feasibility study is to do some public outreach.
Yes, 100%.
I agree with, I support this feasibility study. I agree with your comment about public outreach. I do want to say though, as I think I can fairly say this is the member who lives closest to the 6 active pickleball courts and who has a home office right by a window that is the closest window in my house to the pickleball courts. It ain't that bad. It was adjustment a couple of years ago when they first started playing and like, what is this? What is that sound? I read all the letters and
if we only had an ordinance for those leaf blowers.
Yeah.
I think that's all.
There's a lot more. So I'm not trying to minimize. To say there's no issues, and that's why I support the study. But the fear of the pickleball courts being a neighbor, I think can be more than the reality. And I say that as a neighbor. So, and I think, you said this, Rob, too. I think, I think it's great that it's taken off the way it has. There's different demographics, age demographics, taking up pickleball. So I just think,
So there are other factors besides sound, I think the issue of parking, for example, or the other use.
Yeah, well, I deal with that as well. So I live on Orono Street and there's a parking lot for Kelly Field and many of the pickleball players park in the parking lot of Kelly Field. But some of them park on Orono Street. So,
we already have
this. Yeah, this not in my backyard mentality, whether it's for affordable housing or pickleball, I think we have to be show some more grace to our neighbors and hear them out and learn more before we just say no. So that's all. I've lived with this for the last 3 years and I think it's great.
I don't want to dive too much in that, but I just say, every area is very different. And every area of town is very different. Every neighborhood is very different. What they see in different fields and what they're experiencing. Everybody has different tolerances for everything. So I don't also want to discount the folks that are calling in or giving their opinions. Because it is too easy sometimes to say, hey, it's not my backyard, but there are a lot of folks that I think that are giving some thoughts that are very big on, hey, I do want certain things. So I just want to be honest with that. The only thing I would say about the feasibility study, I like feasibility studies, and I just don't know the answer to this. And this would be like Kevin, but my only issue is we're looking at one sport and where is it best in the town. Absent, I just don't know, does Milton have an overall long-term plan for all of its parks, well, let me finish, for all of its sports. What do we need in this town? Is baseball right to have in all these areas, or is soccer right where it is? Should we, move things around? Like, absent my understanding of a long-term plan, personally, I would have rather seen somebody come forward and say, hey, can I get some money so we can do a feasibility study of all of our parks with pickleball in mind, with baseball, with soccer, with tennis, with whatever sport that we're looking to do, like, street hockey, with skateboard, whatever it is that the town is looking to do. I really do think, and this is maybe me being on the planning board, we really should think long-term planning of where should we be putting things.
So the town is in the process of updating its open space and recreation plan.
Right. So if that's the case, I feel like, to do a feasibility study outside of that plan sounds a little, putting the cart before the horse. That's just my opinion. But I think, I don't know, I would have loved, I'd like to hear at some point from like the Parks Department director to say, hey, this, no, this isn't absent that, it doesn't conflict, or.
Well, that's what Kevin, he's on.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, Kevin, I don't know if you could speak to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
It does not work at Andrews. There's limited green space there. And I agree with a long-term plan on all these fields, but you know what that means, to remove, to change things around, money, where are you getting it?
Yeah, I don't think that's what I'm saying. I definitely wasn't talking specifically about Andrews. I think we were talking about Andrews before that. I don't remember who I talked to, this was years ago, but I had some questions about some of our baseball fields. And one of the statements was, well, I think we're thinking about a long-term plan of what should we be doing? What should our upgrades be? Where should we be putting things? I think that's what I'm talking about. I mean, I do believe there are organizations that come in and look at towns and say, hey, you're utilizing your space right, or you're not, or here's what you can do. I'm just worried that we're looking at a study for one sport. I get it, it's growing, but it's 40 people. And, where are we going to put it? And I get it, Andrews might not be the right space for it, but I just don't know how you're going to find space without knowing the impacts to your other projects in town.
Well, I think that's why the planning board's doing the open space plan for the town, which hasn't been done, I believe, since 2004.
Right.
Which I think will help a lot in this town.
Agreed.
It's just so tough to move stuff. It's just,
Yeah, and I think to complicate matters is, that's why I like the LED lighting, because there's all these groups came together. And the one thing is Milton Parks and Rec is like the umbrella, but then there's soccer or Gaelic football or whatever, all these other silos, in town, and they all have interests, right? But then no one talks to each other. So I love your thinking, like big thinking on it. But
to the point though, you can't move things. Once you put an 8-core system somewhere, you're never going to move them. So that's stuck. And so that's why I'm saying you can't look at things in a vacuum. I'm not fighting it.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm just thinking, but I think to that point, it's like, that's why I don't even, it's looking at what's 2 courts or 4 courts, whatever, like getting the pen to the paper and figuring it out. And I think everyone's right here that Andrews Park isn't the right spot for it, knowing in the neighborhood where it is and how it's used, but maybe another spot in town is, on every space.
Back to the master plan implementation committee.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if it was.
Was there other suggestions of places to look? I think what's going to be important if we do decide to fund this is, to Pete's comment, is like, let's look and get input from master plan implementation committee to look at this.
One of the people said was, multi-use surfaces.
Yeah.
Combine the tennis and the basketball courts that are being redone at Amber's. I mean, again, you've got those are close to the house, and the tennis court is very close to houses there. But it's just another option to think about. And that I used to live at the end of Houston Ave, right next to the tennis courts, and this was like 25 years ago, and there was a backboard there. And that was really loud at 8 o'clock on Sunday morning, when they used the backboard. And they took the backboard down because people were complaining about it. But that was an example of they didn't take out the tennis, they just took out the one thing that was bothering people the most.
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, I'm not really arguing anything, just in the sense of I just want us to make sure we look at all things, because what I'm afraid of is next year somebody comes in and says, you know, skateboard parks is the biggest thing. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Not to minimize this, but now we need to find a place for that. So you got to think of all these things. The other thing is, I'm hoping in the feasibility study, they're looking at, so if there's 7, and I get it, there are 7 courts, but they're courts that you have to adjust and you have to do things to, so they're not dedicated. So I get that, right? So you're competing for space. But my question would be, or my comment would be, hopefully there's something in the feasibility study that says, this is how many courts we should have in the area. Right. Knowing that there's Braintree here, there's something here, you've got 7 here. Do you need 10 more? Do you need 2 more? You know, not just where can you fit 2 more, but how many do you really need?
Yeah. Kevin.
Yes. I do. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. Thank you. It's almost 9:30 and we'll still have one more to go. You're gonna be quick, right?
I am certainly gonna be quick. Just
Extra points for
just a walk-up door. I just wanted to comment, Kevin's been on the call. My name is Scott McKay, I'm a former park commissioner, and the idea of a global study across the town has been discussed in the past. It was a matter of funding, and I think this year some things, at least for CPA wise, took precedent before taking that step. I can't see why that can't be a really good use of CPA funds for next year.
I appreciate that, only, and not to take longer on this, but it doesn't mean you need to do anything. It just gives you a sense, right?
I agree, in taking stock of what the inventory is in terms of fields, but also what the use is going to be long term. It's just smart.
Yeah.
You know, going to the town.
That's what the recreational open space plan does. That's, you know, the intent. Exactly that scope of work.
Yeah.
Is there funding for that? Is there?
Oh, yeah, Josh could address that, I'm sure, in the process.
So is that what the open space and rec committee is doing right now? Or?
Yes, they're reviewing work that is being done by Hartley Wood, the consultants who are working on it.
So if we're doing this now, like that's like pickleball, you know.
Not that specific.
The pickleball study, much like the work park study, would certainly supplement.
It would supplement
the plan, be useful and worthwhile.
But it's not like something that happens in a vacuum.
Don't have to remember what it costs for that townwide thing when you guys are studying, right? Looking at just the parks.
We solicited 3 bids. We did do an RFP, so it's less than 50 grand. So probably just about that. It might be 40 bucks.
Yeah, to double the money, you can do everything.
And which department is doing them? Parks or?
I bet you it's more. Because if you're every.
So let's say it's 60.
Yeah,
You have 20 or you get 60, rather than 60 get one.
The planning departments. Okay. Right.
Sorry.
So,
You're on the floor.
Again, my name is Scott McKay, I'm a former park commissioner, and I sit on the board of Milton Farmers Market and also on the board of Friends of Milton Recreation. So. So this application the Milton Farmers Market and Friends of Milton Recreation are both 501c3 organizations. So we propose this as a joint committee to ask for funding to study some rehabilitation, but also some repurposing of Wharf Park that's down near the waterfront. It's a fairly heavily used park on certain times of the year and also certain times of the week. The farmers market's been down there since 1996. And that's on Thursdays from 1 to 5, 1 to 6 in that time frame. So just based on the topography there, and you can see it in the bottom right-hand slide, there's a fairly significant slope from the Adams Street side down towards 88 Wharf 88. So with that and just use over the years, there's a lot of exposed roots, and the soil system there is in pretty tough shape. So there has been conversation within the Milton Farmers Market Board that the space is relatively unsafe to continue to operate the market. And last year we spent some time trying to find a different spot in town that might suit our needs a little bit better. And just having conversations, we ended up having a conversation with the planning department to see if there could possibly be some a relationship that we could have. And this area is ripe for redevelopment. It's an overlay zoning district, so there's going to be some changes happening in the next several years. And I think this particular park is a cornerstone green space within that. So working with the planning department to say, all right, well, perhaps we could rehabilitate this park in the long run to make it more usable for not only the farmers market, but inviting folks in other community organizations to use the space. Perhaps putting a gazebo in, maybe a stage, having some either music or theater in the park, whatever it happens to be, just make it a more inviting space for folks in the neighborhood to use, folks in the community to use. Doesn't have any benches, and there's a pretty decrepit, and actually you can see it in that shot. It's a
actually there is a bench. There's one.
It's not.
It doesn't look very
solidified into the ground. And actually it had a picnic bench and one of the trees in that the branches in the tree in the middle fell and smashed up into pieces over the year. So there's only one picnic bench there now, but there's also a walkway that bisects the park, and you can see that on the top right slide. It is in complete disrepair, very dangerous to walk on, certainly not ADA accessible. Not only is it unsafe, but it also takes away from full usage of the park. So this study is to design and potentially engineer either better topography, use the land better. There's an exposed root system that needs to be worked on. If there's any way to either add land to the east side or lower the land to the west side to even the space off. Those are the considerations again for a study that we would be going for. So that is the plan that is on the table now. We did informally talk to 3 or 4 different architecture firms on whether or not a $25,000 estimate would be appropriate or not. And they all came back with a yes, and we actually got one of them to put that in writing, that it would be $25,000 just to study it and come up with some schematics and the design would be appropriate amount of money to ask for. So also in terms of budgeting for the larger project that's going to come downstream, that's somewhere around $250,000 would be the additional cost to redo the park. So again, it depends on what kind of amenities are put in at the park, but that's just to give you an idea of what a potential project could look like. But again, I think this is a great park, not only from being on the farmers market and using the space, but again, with the redevelopment in that area, we need to keep our blue and green spaces available for public use. And I think this would be a great opportunity to make it a more useful space for most of them.
I'm a little confused about the difference between the feasibility study and what the 250 estimate, which looked like it was more detailed actually than the feasibility study. I have no idea what
it would be a first phase for design and engineering of the space. So it would be site survey, you know, what a set of construction documents could look like, reaching out to the neighbors and different users of the parks, working with the planning department to see what this space could actually look like, to be able to then take the next step and ask for the funding to do the construction. So really, it's like, it's all the pre-construction work to get this essentially shovel ready for the next round of funding.
What would you imagine it being different than what is proposed in terms of the?
There's a lot of, and perhaps you could just a landscape architect on the there's a lot of dirt work that needs to happen to level off this park. Like you can see in that picture, it's a severe slope. It is not ADA accessible. That would be something that I think would be a cornerstone of this project to make it available to all folks in Milton.
Yeah,
Jenny, I think it was premature to try to put together a construction outfit, construction estimate, because you have no idea what the scope is going to be. You know, so they were trying to get toward, you know, a study. You know, I don't even know this thing about putting construction documents together. You know, how can you budget that? You don't know if you're going to be bringing electricity into the park, which means you need an electrical engineer. You don't know what kind of structure you're going to build there. You know, is it something out of a catalog that you just put there, or is it, you know, designed? So in my mind, it's even kind of premature to try to put an estimate on putting construction documents together. But certainly to study the existing conditions of the site, you know, I think the trees have to be evaluated, the soil compaction has to be evaluated, the soil quality's got to be evaluated, and then based on that, you know, start working on design alternatives for it. And based on a selected design, we can then put together a scope of work for final engineering and for construction. But I think this is a great start. I think, you know, I think this amount of money can get a very good proposal, since it's going to have to go out and get proposals from consultants. Different consultants will kind of see this differently. I think it's a good budget for the work that's being anticipated, but trying to think of what a construction budget might be, I think it's a little premature.
I think it's helpful to have these numbers in our head as we go look forward, because we do have potential through feasibility studies. So whether it's 250, 300, whatever, you know, God knows, it's good to have it in the back of our mind, because they're going to come, you're going to come back and look for money for, you know.
Well, and you know, this concept, the process to get it to a point of coming to you folks and asking for 250,000 to do the park.
You can't,
the timeline
a problem before you want.
So I think to give this a little bit of space to breathe and really get input on what this park could be, it's going to allow for some of that time. I don't know if you wanted to mention timeline. I don't think this is it's not gonna take a full year. Once July 1 hits, I think we can get some consultants in fairly short order to be able to get this thing back. If we're gonna consider this next year for CPA funds, or you guys want to consider it?
That's something else I want to mention, because the timing of these things, the way this goes, is it's going to take you some time to do the feasibility study. That won't happen until the fall. You've already missed next year's funding, because what I would like to do is roll this back. We are like coming right on the edge of where town meeting, like we should have these articles in already. And so we kind of want to roll that back a few months. You know, we just have to think about that as our committee goes forward, because, you know, it's crazy to, like, you know, 2 months, give you guys 2 months to put all this stuff together. And
so just also the amount of money that's being requested won't have to go through the RFP process either. It's still below that threshold that it is for design services. So if this proposal is going to be funded by CPA, I think some of the behind the scenes legwork can be done before the actual funding starts, if that makes sense. So we can have conversations with folks that's not going to cost us anything, and hit the ground running in July 1st.
I just wanted to say that when we did the overlay district for this area, there is a proposal that's been talked about, you know, putting housing over parking lot at the Milton station. So to have the town ready with a plan for the park that could then be used to talk to developers to sort of contribute towards that makes a lot of sense. And to have the study, the feasibility study, to have some sort of thing that you can then show to a developer to say this
is what we have planned.
To have that be an amenity for a project is a great thing to have in hand.
Will a feasibility study touch, this is a historic area of town with the lockup, with the war, and obviously the focus is on the soil and the accessibility of it, but I don't know if there's anything there about the history of the site and what this, will the consultant be able to look at that and
I can't see why they wouldn't be able to.
I don't know what that
you
might
might speak to this, but my understanding was that there's been some discussion over the year that this could have been in Olmsted Park. And
really,
our planning director strongly disagrees with that.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I think.
No.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's it.
There was a guy, my friend Jack Lowry's great grandfather had a shipyard right back there. So there wasn't an Olmsted Park.
Yeah.
Well, that take that.
No, but I should see if there's history on the side.
Well, there is, there was a shipyard.
Yeah, that's cool.
But even in cool history, talking about the ship.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that speaks to coordination with all the other activities going down there. There's, people looking at redevelopment of the lockup and the whole waterfront there, and the parks and open space and other things, and the overlay district and things like that. So I think all those groups should be brought into a discussion of how this space can complement everything else going on.
The Milton Landing Committee, which is doing the lockup, did issue a letter of support for this project.
And, I was not around, but I was able to watch the planning board conversation in terms of why it was important for this particular project to get a letter of support from the planning department. And I think it goes, I wish I was able to speak up at the meeting, but I think this particular project within the scope of what is happening in that area is important. And to have a partner in the planning board who's taking a look at the overall space and what this park is within that development, I think is important. So it's just another letter of support from someone down there who's saying, this is important to the overall picture.
And to me, that kind of speaks to, again, this talks about preparing construction documents. I'd rather see the 25,000 go for the historic research, the environmental investigations, the coordination with everything else going there, and some creative ideas. And, use this to get a picture of what the park might be, coordinating all those people. And then the next phase can be to do the design and the construction.
Great. Any other questions, comments?
That's great.
If that's it, we're done for tonight. We learned one thing. It's gonna be tough with 6 applicants. Although I think that, let's hope it'll be a little bit.
Keep it tight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard though to not people.
Keep us on track.
Yeah, we weren't too bad. All right.
So any motion to adjourn or?
Yeah, good. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Are we in this room next week?
We are. I think we're here.